You are now going to watch the last video for Unit 8. You should be on page 22, and you will be completing examples on page 23. So we're going to find out what kites are. They are part of the family of quadrilaterals. And we're not going to fly any today. Ha ha. What conditions does a figure have to meet in order to be a polygon? So I'm repeating myself. You should know it by heart. It's formed by 3 or more segments or sides where no two sides are collinear, and each side intersect exactly 2 sides, one at each endpoint. What condition does a polygon have to meet in order to be a quadrilateral? It has 4 sides. What condition does a quadrilateral have to meet in order to be a kite? Okay, so it has 2 pairs of consecutive, congruent sides. But the opposite sides are not congruent. So, let's see, let's use blue. So we're saying that these are the same and they're consecutive because they're one right after the other. We'll change our color and we'll say that these are congruent. They come one right after the other, they're consecutive. That's what that statement means. And in terms of being opposite, if you took this side opposite that side, they are not congruent. Not at all. Okay, clean up our kite. Should look familiar to you if you've ever had a chance to make a kite. They're a lot of fun to fly. A kite is a quadrilateral that has no pairs of parallel sides. So that's what makes it very different from all of the other quadrilaterals. Even the trapezoid had at least one pair of parallel sides. The kite, no. But instead of just being some sort of a random quadrilateral, the kite has specific dimensions whereby the 2 consecutive sides are actually congruent to each other so that there's a symmetry. If a quadrilateral is a kite, its diagonals are perpendicular. And it has exactly one pair of opposite angles that are congruent. So we have this drawn in. It's on your packet page. The lines that are drawn to be diagonals form 90-degree angles. That means they're perpendicular. And then the opposite angles on one pair are going to be congruent. And in this case, angle A and angle C are congruent. Now you're going to use what you know about the kites to find missing angle measurements, and you practice independently on page 23. I'm going to go over this with you. When we're dealing with angle measurements, we remember that a quadrilateral has 360 degrees. We now know that the angles that are opposite each other are also congruent in one pair. So we start with our first example. If E is 124, I, or L, I think that's a I, will also be 124. I'll call that an I, is 124 degrees. Now I have to get all the way up to 360, and I have 32 degrees down at angle T. So I add 124 and 124. That's 248. Plus the 32 degrees at angle T gives me a total of 280. And I'm going to subtract that from 360. And you ended up with an answer of 80 degrees for angle K. Pretty straightforward. Now if we do the next one, we're trying to solve the angle measurements, X and Z. We know they're congruent because the other two opposite angles are not the same. If I add 97 degrees and 139 degrees, I get 236, and I'm going to subtract that from 360. And I'm going to get 124. Now, is that the angle measurement of X or Z? No. It's the total of the two angles, because each of them is going to be the same amount. So I'm going to divide 124 by 2. And that quickly gives me 62. So angle X is 62 degrees, and angle Z is 62 degrees. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to practice independently on page 23. Raise your hand if you have any questions. Remember the simple rules that apply. That the opposite angles are the same, and that the diagonals bisect each other. They're perpendicular, I'll say that much. You're going to find that they're going to be that the diagonal going across from the congruent angles is bisected by the other diagonal. Okay, review the rest of your packet, and then you'll be ready for your final quiz, and then start reviewing for the unit test.